Hey, we are live. Welcome everyone to another fully live episode of Cyber Weapons Lab. My name is Kody. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and also I'm the creator of the Null Byte YouTube channel. Welcome to everyone who's here with us today in the chat, and welcome to our now regular co-host, Kilian.
Hey, Kody. Hey, everyone. Nice to be back again. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, as I said, we are fully live today. So, as we go through our little demonstration, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. We would love to answer any questions you have about the demonstration, or just generally kind of fill you in on what it's like to do this kind of work. So, again, that's been probably the most fun part of the last streams. Please feel free to chime in. Now, we're going to be picking up kind of where we left off. We've done a lot of pretty abusive things to Windows, and I feel like for me, that's been kind of a blind spot on Null Byte. We really haven't picked on Null Byte. We haven't really picked on Windows enough. So I want to continue the series that we've done on Windows exploitation and show a little bit more of what we can do once we get that foothold with maybe the malicious Office document that we talked about last time. Or actually, I think we did. Did we do ransomware last time, or did we do malicious Office macros? It feels like we've done so many already.
Well, the nice thing is, I think last time we did the malware, or sorry, the ransomware, excuse me, and then we did the malicious documents. Oh boy, I gotta get untongue-tied. Malicious malware. It's a lot of M's in alliteration. But the nice thing is, at least in this one, we actually build off of the same concepts too. Everyone who's eagle-eyed is going to notice. We're starting in similar places. Lots of things we can do once we get that foothold.
I'm also being told that I have a robot voice, so if I'm echoing a little bit, I'm sorry. Hopefully our production person will fix that at some point. But yeah, so we've done a pretty good series on getting started with just learning how these exploits work and kind of coming to terms with they're not that complicated and they're not that crazy. So today we're going to take a step further and show what you can do when you're inside a Windows system and exactly what you can gain just from getting that initial access. And it's, spoiler alert, it's pretty shocking how you can start to downgrade the security that's there. I mean, the security might be fine while it's in place, but if you can downgrade it, if you can start to crack credentials, if you can start to spread around the network, a small breach can really get large very quickly.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And then we're going to take you through, it might kind of seem and sound similar as we explain it, but there's going to be subtle differences between the last one that we did with the malware. I'm really kind of pivoting, and I'll walk through that. The building blocks are actually kind of similar, which is cool, but you can do so many things with the same type of building blocks and getting that foothold in there. So are we ready to jump in, Kody? What do you think?
I think so.
What's going on?
There's a debate in the chat right now over whether the glitch in my audio is super cool or really annoying. So I guess we'll find out as we go on. Anyway, let's continue. So again, we're also going to be doing. Is there an attack lab scheduled for this where people could check out a more in-depth presentation if they wanted to?
So for this, Varonis does run these several times a week on the Varonis corporate webinars. And what it covers is the initial setup that we're going to cover here today. And then they also flip over to the other side and show what defense looks like. So showing the Varonis interface and how we catch these alerts and do an investigation and triage some of this. So we can link to that schedule too, but that's more for Varonis customers.
Yeah, so if you do this for work, then and if you're dying to know how every detail of this works, then you can always follow up that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cool. So just to start off, this should look familiar for folks who have viewed at least our last webinar, but we're back in the Metasploit framework again. We have our reverse listener open, so we're sitting here waiting for a victim to come through. And sure enough, if I jump over to my other computer, here we are back in the email again, huh? Oh, and what do we have here? A salary update.
That's great juicy news.
I like money, and if they want to give me a little bit more, hey, I'm not going to turn that down. So I got my email here. I'm going to go ahead and check this out. Varonis says, Kilian, or Kody, you're doing a great job. We love the stream. We get lots of great comments. So we want to give you a little bit more money, a little bit more funding for the show. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and open this up, though, because I want that money. Hold on a second.
So one thing I should also mention for people who like maybe haven't seen the previous streams,
Right.
if you want to figure out how we got here, like how we made this document, how we're like now the hacker like lurking in the background, check out our creating malicious office macros, and that explains the whole process of getting to this point where we are now. If you're a little confused as to how we set all this stuff up, we go through everything step by step in the last one. So.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. So, oh, wait a minute. Oh, darn, I must be running that old version of Office, or I don't know what's going on here. But you know what? I want that money. They said I'm getting a 12% raise. That's nothing to sneeze at, right? So, I'm definitely going to enable the content here.
Look, okay, so I have to comment on that security warning. It was all caps, but it was kind of like transparent yellow. It should have been like flashing red for like what's about to happen.
Right. And we got a little social engineering going on here. Oh, it was created in an old version. Go ahead and click that bar. It's fine. No worries. Then we'll show you everything. And, scarily effective. But, oh, wait a minute. It didn't work there. Something must be up. I don't know. I should probably call IT, or I should call my boss, or I don't know. I want to investigate that. But so far, basically I clicked this and nothing happened as far as I can tell.
So, and this could happen to anyone. You could be at work and get an invoice from a customer you've dealt with 1,000 times, and it looks exactly like that customer's email address, but either they've been breached and they're just spamming all their customers now with malware, or you're being targeted specifically, and it's someone who's just set up a domain with almost an identical looking, maybe like a Cyrillic character that just looks like that domain. You get an invoice, you're struggling to open it because it's not expected. It gives you this like little pale yellow security warning with an explanation all big, like, oh, this is an older version. Like, it's okay to open it. Like, if you're in a hurry, most people would open the invoice to find out why your company's being billed so you don't get in trouble. Like, there really isn't that much warning. Like, warning, this could take over your entire computer if you don't trust the sender. Like, that should be the warning, not just like enabling macros can be dangerous. Like, what does that mean? Like, ooh, like, you want to play it safe, or do you want to, like, walk on the wild side? It sounds like a dare to me. It doesn't seem like a serious warning. So, like, that's really where a lot of people are like, how is it that this isn't, picked up by Windows Defender?
Right.
Well, like, honestly, like, it thinks that it's warned you adequately at that step, which to me is hilarious, because that was not a serious enough warning for what we're about to do.
And as you mentioned, Kody, too, there's social engineering involved here too. They've thought ahead of this. They've put this the nice warning here with the nice logo, and they made it look pretty good. And you could be doing something with like the thread hijacking. If somebody's compromised Exchange, for example, or part of the proxy logon, they dumped all the mailbox, they dumped all the email threads, and they're replying back to a trusted one. This could look like it's part of an existing stream or thread. You can't underestimate that the social engineering bit of it.
Well, one thing that actually happened one time was I was working. I had worked with a logistics company that then hit me up a year later with just a straight up virus, looking like this, and it was like, what happened, you guys? So I called them, and they're like, oh, sorry, somebody got into our email and sent out a prank. And I was like,
prank, yeah.
You guys just attacked every customer you work with. Like, do you understand that, like, all these people you work with are now, like, going to have to, like, have the same incident response that you do, and you're not even telling them. So, like, this is real. This is super common, and it leverages the fact that businesses work with each other and trust each other all the time. So it's kind of almost, it's like a supply chain attack, where if you can find someone that works with the company that you want to breach, and they trust each other, often the social engineering trick, which is very low-hanging fruit, will actually work. So just an example of how this sort of attack happens in the real world.
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out. I mean, literally right before this, I was texting with one of my friends, worked with him for a long time, and he texts me, he goes, oh, I heard you're looking for one of the new NVIDIA graphics cards, because they're unobtainium. They're like, striking gold oil, pretty much. And it was a link, and I'm looking, I'm like, I know this is something up. Something's this isn't real. But I'm like, I got to click on it. I got to know. And I clicked on it, redirected me to a Rickroll. So I got gaslit. But that's a joke that goes way back forever. And like, I knew it, but like totally worth it to click the link.
Well, I've been getting things that say, like, you won an Amazon raffle, which isn't a real thing, and then it redirects you to a URL that tries to get you to sign up, view a document like this, and the URL goes through, like, 8 different redirects to, like, try to learn about you before it does it and, like, present it in the right language. So there are some very sophisticated attacks that rely on that sort of vector.
Right. Oh, and it should be said too. He went through the trouble of obfuscating the URL, so it wasn't just a link to YouTube.
It was just
'cause that's
Bitly
pretty
or
quick.
something.
And it had a picture of. He went to the trouble of having the picture of the graphics card and the name, so it was like very well laid out. So I appreciate the effort he put into to Rickrolling. So
We have
shout out to him.
we have a question from the chat, which is, I literally get so many emails from African billionaires. I always report them on Google, but I don't understand how they find the email address. Is it from a breach? Yes. If you want to learn more about this, you can check out our friend Troy Hunt's website to see if you've been pwned. But basically, yes, that like I get emails that are like, hello, Kody, and then like my account's old password, and they're like, we know your password.
Right.
We know everything. Send us $50. We know everything. There's like not a lot of like real specifics there, but these breaches, even if it's an old account you don't use anymore, if they get your password and you've used that password in other places, it makes you think that the attack is bigger than it really is. So social engineering attack, or well, breaches and then social engineering attacks that rely on breaches are very common. Everybody gets hit with them, and once your email address is out there, especially if it's paired with other information, you can expect to get random attacks like the the African billionaire attack, or much more targeted attacks where you might get a document like the one that we're looking at today trying to backdoor your computer, because they're very easy to craft and send out.
Absolutely. So while we were doing that, I flipped back over to my attacker machine here, and back in Metasploit, you can see we have a new line. I can zoom in. I know people are going to ask as we go through. The computer was not cooperating, but I can zoom in a little bit. But suffice it to say, I now have a new session open. So by clicking that document, it's opened that reverse shell connection back to my attacker machine. So I was just waiting for somebody to click on there, and now I have that session that's established. So the machine that I've compromised, where I opened the Word doc and enabled the macro content, has now called back to the attacker. So I called home here. So now I can start doing some fun and malicious stuff, maybe.
So just for people who are like, why was there no Windows Defender? Like, what happened to the antivirus? Can you tell them how the sausage was made on this? Like what sneaky move were you able to pull in order to launch a shell and then start running this binary that you're absolutely not supposed to be running?
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on how you're doing it. I think in this particular lab, I think I am going to run some exploits on here. But you can craft these macros, and again, I'll call back to the other video. You can craft these macros in a way where it's pretty benign looking. Just doing basically an HTTP maybe post to send information back once you've established that session running under there. And if you set it into like a while loop in programmer terms, where it's just kind of running in the background and checking to see if there's any connections, that's a pretty simple way to bypass it without doing anything malicious necessarily. It's just going to look at an HTTP connection and running some macro scripts.
Oh, well, that's much more in depth than I meant. I was trying to lead you over to just mentioning that you're basically spawning a new shell using a process that's like the only process that is not blacklisted from spawning new shells.
Yep. No, fair enough. Well, someone got a little extra for free there. There we go.
Yeah. So like it just happens that there's a couple programs that are, I think at least one program, if not more, that are exempted from this restriction off of launching a new like PowerShell or command window. And if you just in that Office document have a single command that just launches that, then you can make it very, very easy to bypass some of the restrictions that are built in, just because it would break convenience features to lock this stuff down. So
absolutely,
very funny.
Yeah, funny. So in this case, I have my shell. I'm interacting with it. I went ahead and said I want to talk to this particular session. I can have multiple sessions, and we'll see that going on as I move through. But let's pretend this is somewhat indiscriminate. Maybe I did that thread hijacking, but I don't know exactly who's going to click on it. So I want to learn a little bit about the organization. And we've seen this in a couple labs, but this is so common. It's just so easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a reverse DNS lookup. I'm just going to say, hey, DNS, behave exactly as you're designed to. Tell me what's out there on the network. I'm going to give you a series of IP addresses. So if you're on your machine and you do, an IP config or an IF configure if you're on Linux to list what your network interface is, you can have it just tell you what else is on the subnet. Just go through. So let's go ahead.
Oh, by the way, could you move the terminal just a little bit towards the center of the screen? I think I'm about to start cutting off the text, and people will be mad.
Let me grab it here.
Block your view.
Oh, good.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Right between us.
Cool. All right, there we go. Let's. Where's my thing at? Hold on. let me see if I can just make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
I'm running this. I'm like terminal inception here. There we go. Kali is running inside of a VM on a VM that I'm connected to now.
Whoa, Inception. That's
Yeah.
you got a lot of layers of abstraction going on there, buddy.
I'm getting crazy with the cheese whiz to steal a phrase from our or one of our fine producers. Okay, so what I'm doing now is basically this is just a script that kind of runs other scripts. So I've just uploaded some of that. It's just going to be basically a PowerShell script that I'm going to run over on the victim machine now. And all the PowerShell script is going to do is it's going to iterate through all of the subnets on that machine to do reverse lookups. So here it goes. You can see, and I can zoom in a little bit then if people can't see it. But it's just saying, hey, for every one of these subnets, they're all /24 subnets, so Class C, I believe. Someone, if I'm wrong, someone will tell me that I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So for all the 253, whatever it is, if you're not counting, 1 and 255, tell me DNS what is out there. So hey, 10.60.201.2, 10.60.201.3. Is there anything out here? And if there is, what's the name of it? So this is just a kind of like really simple recon, basically.
So for those keeping track, we're now in the enumeration phase of the attack, where we're trying to find everything that's out there for us to get, and we're trying to basically prioritize targets and figure out what will give us the best success while avoiding raising any alarms. And for the people who keep asking if we're live, yes, we are fully live. And no, we will not help you hack your girlfriend.
Yeah, to prove we're live, what can we say?
Oh, well,
maybe buggy bumpers. You didn't expect
there,
that.
There you go. The proof is right there. Some people are also asking for the resources on this. For right now, we're using Metasploit. So you guys can head on over to the great people at Rapid7 and check out Metasploit. It's great for these sort of demos, but we're just using very basic tools that everybody has access to that are free. So.
Yep. And then this is just a really simple PowerShell script. Basically, it's just a loop if we want to get into it, and it's just doing the reverse lookup for all of those. Spend a few minutes looking. You can probably just grab them right off the line. You don't have to probably even write it yourself. It's a pretty simple thing. So in this case, what I've done is I've gone through and I've resolved looks like 4 hosts. Desktop 1, which is the machine that I happen to be on now as the victim. We have desktop 2, an Exchange server, and then Hyper-V in this lab. So I was able to resolve those 4. So now that I've kind of compromised one machine, I've established my beachhead on that one system. I'm gonna be a little bit more tricky here. So I want to expand out kind of past just this machine, and I'll walk you through why. But now that I've exploited that one user, I got my foothold. I've done a little bit of recon. I have to assume at some point that maybe the person who I compromised is going to call their manager and say, "Hey, what's up with that raise?" or call IT. My word's not working. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have that foothold and I don't just have one way into the environment.
Right.
But the first thing I want to do is, let me run a different script. I want to start to figure out, I have one person's account. How do I get more accounts? How do I get more credentials, basically? So let me run this next guy.
Oh, so one comment we had on the stream was, when I try to run these sorts of scans, I get detected by the IDS. And yes, I mean, we're doing this as a demonstration live, and we're trying to do it as fast as possible. So if we wanted to do a more low and slow approach, we could just sniff the network and discover hosts as they exchange traffic. There's all sorts of other things we could do to make this much more undetectable. But generally, if a target is lightly defended, or if it's not specifically configured to be looking for weird DNS queries internal to the network, it's only looking for malicious external ones, then this would get by a lot of different systems. But again, we're just trying to do this quickly so that you guys can watch it. If you really wanted to spend a week surveying a network and come in all low and slow an APT, you can absolutely do that. But I don't think you guys want to see a week-long stream of us watching network traffic and be yes, the domain controller, finally. I mean, we could do that, but you guys would have to pay us somehow. We have families.
A lot of, mustache twirling, very devious as we wait for a plan to happen.
Yeah.
So while we were doing that, I was actually doing some devious stuff. So what I did next is on that victim machine, I want to get some additional information. Actually, I want to get really some Kerberos tickets here. So I I have the initial kind of beachhead. I'm on that machine. But what I want to do is, maybe I'll take just a very quick step back. Maybe I'm jumping in just a little bit ahead before I start stealing some tickets. So when you authenticate in a Windows machine, when you log in, you say, "Hey, domain controller, I'm Kilian," or "I'm Kody. This is my username and password. You know us," and you authenticate. And the domain controller says, "We sure do. You might like to access additional resources on the network." So what we're going to do is we're going to send you basically a TGT ticket, so a ticket granting ticket. And what that allows us to do is that's kind of our thumbs up to be able to use other resources on the domain. So I could use that, for example, if I want to access additional resources. I can say, "Hey, Active Directory, there's a service that I might like to access. Here's my TGT ticket. Please send me a service granted ticket so I can go off and use that for the service." To call back to anybody who was watching on the previous one, this is some of the bits that like Kerberoasting exploits here to dump those connections. So what I'm doing on this machine is out of memory on my one machine, I'm extracting any of those Kerberos tickets that are stored here. So if I logged on here and if other accounts have logged on, I think it depends on the domain, but I think the time to live on the tickets is something like 7 days, but I think that's configurable. But anyway, what I'm doing is I'm pulling those out of memory because we've gone through the authentication phase and I have the valid tickets now. So I'm going to do some other kind of tricky stuff with them. And that's the way you can see here. And maybe this is a little bit hard to see, but we have ones from engineer, we have from financial manager, we have some others. So I've dumped them all out of memory at this point.
So we had a really good comment on the stream, which was you should plan to decoy rat file on their endpoints. That way, when the system administrator comes in and checks to see if there was a breach, they'll find the decoy and think that they're clean and leave you alone. That's exactly what a lot of these people will do. They'll breach a single endpoint. They'll migrate and take over like a much more powerful power tools. They'll take over like a much more powerful like domain controller or something else, and then they will clean up the intrusion and make it look like it was much less serious than it really was.
Right.
So they basically try to like wrap it up with a bow and give it to the incident responder. So if they're lazy, they won't look any further and they won't be able to detect some of these other more serious things that could have happened. And then I also need to shut down the rumor that we're secretly filming White Girls 2 starring Keegan Michael. That is not what we are filming.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Thank you to the live chat for that.
Did you hear the power tools going on, Kody? I think
just a tiny bit. There's a little bit of accent of drill, but aside from that, I think we're good.
That's just my secret, cracking lab. I have the guys with the power tools trying to crack these passwords offline.
Oh, I was gonna be like, is that the sound of your GPU? Like that's crazy. Like you should just cook on that.
There you go. So now that I've grabbed these tickets, right? So the next thing I want to do is I want to work on that sort of expansion at this point. So I'm gonna move on to the next part, and let's go ahead and kick this off. So I have these tickets. I've downloaded them. I can show you they're just in a file. Here we go. Oh, it's misbehaving. Okay, let's give it a second to see if it works. So what I'm doing here, or what it's supposed to be showing me here, is I want to pull out the password hashes, but it looks like it should have been in this middle section. It should have told me my password hashes, but it didn't. Maybe it's running in the background.
Nice.
But anyway, what it's doing is it's going to extract the password hashes from the system now. So I have my Kerberos tickets. I also am going to pull out my password hashes as well too. And with these two different things, now I can start to do some kind of pretty tricky type of stuff. So there's not much to see because it didn't, for whatever reason, render my hashes. So otherwise I'd show you my hashes, but they come up in just a second here.
Hell yeah. Live demos, excellent.
Right. Okay. Let's move on. So now so go ahead.
Let me just assume that you guys have never heard of like what this is or how Windows does this. Basically, like for machines to be able to log into each other, they will cache like a hash of the password that they're using to authenticate. And if you do some tricky things to downgrade the security, so it's using the worst possible hashed version of that password, then you can end up with a hash that's actually possible to crack in a fairly short period of time. So this is basically taking like Windows' fairly excellent security and then abusing its want to be compatible with all the previous versions of Windows and everything else that might be interacting with it, and forcing it to, unless you specifically disable this, to support legacy encryption and other sorts of things that are too weak to really be effective anymore.
So here's the pretty cool thing. So I just went ahead and run this so we can see it here. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to expand out. I learned some additional hosts that I might want to compromise. And I know that at some point, my time limit on this particular host on desktop 1 is going to run out. Somebody's going to do something, turn it off or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and connect to desktop 2. So what I've done is I've extracted the password hash out of there. And I can see here in this line, I'm using my engineer user. And here's the password hash that I'm using, so the hash of my password. And I'm going to try and authenticate to that. So I'm just going to send the hash and my username and try and connect over to that other machine. You can see here that I'm authenticating to that as the engineer with that hash. So far, I don't actually know the password. I haven't cracked or done anything like that yet. I'm just basically, replaying the information that I've extracted from somewhere else. And in this case, I was successful in connecting there. So now I have a second session established. So I'm on my session 1 on desktop 1, but I have this new interpreter session on session 2 from the password hash that I extracted and kind of sent over to that desktop 2. So let's connect to that one.
Question: John the Ripper or Hashcat? Which to crack your hashes?
I mean, I don't know if you have a strong opinion. I'm pretty old school, and I use John the Ripper for the most part. But I don't see, maybe someone has a really strong opinion, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Hashcat's the preferred one anymore. Maybe it's they've upgraded it a lot, but I always used to use John the Ripper. But
personally, I use Hashcat, but that's because I also do a lot of attacks against Wi-Fi, and Hashcat supports that. So
there you go.
Yeah, just for sheer variability and
right.
all these different things that it supports, Hashcat has always surprised me in just
right.
how many different things it's able to crack. So different different purposes.
I'll have to take a look at that because, like I said, I'm a pretty old school guy, but I'm open to new security tools. I'll have to check that out.
Some of the stuff. Oh yeah, sorry. Some of the stuff that you can get with BetterCap also is very, very sneaky. You can get the hash for a Wi-Fi network that doesn't have any clients attached to it and crack the password, which was never possible before. But I think you would have to use Hashcat to do that. So another kind of cool thing it can do.
Oh, see, I'm learning a lot even on the stream. I'm gonna have to look at some new tools and come back and do a book report.
Definitely.
So in this case,
strong feelings in the chat about Hashcat versus John the Ripper. Oh my gosh! All right, we're gonna move on.
Well, we can get into that in a minute. So
people
just to
are
recap,
swearing.
I think we can all agree that there are some great ways to do this. And, you pick which one. Do you like Coke or Pepsi? I don't think we're going to reinvent the wheel, but whatever. So anyway, to recap, just kind of where we are. We established a connection on desktop 1. We pulled out all the Kerberos tickets from there. We then also extracted the password hash as well. So we want to connect to a different machine because we know the time is limited on our current one. So we want to spread out as wide as we can and establish as much of a foothold as we possibly can. So what we did is we passed the hash. We did a pass the hash attack to a desktop 2 in the environment, and we were able to successfully connect to that guy now. We ran the same type of exploits that we did before. So now I have a interpreter session, and I'm actually talking to desktop 2 now. So we start on desktop 1, we're on desktop 2 now. So I've spread out. Even if IT comes along and says, hey, something's up with this desktop 1, we're going to shut it off. You're infected. I now have my persistency, at least on a different machine, that can continue my attack.
Oh, well, sorry, guys. We have to stop the presentation because Benny wants us to do a video on low orbit ion cannon. Well, we got to do what the audience wants. You guys want us to stop this incredibly technical demo and show you guys how to do low orbit ion cannon?
Well, you know what?
Okay, all right. We're going to continue.
Maybe if we keep up with this, someone's going to, hit us with a low orbit ion cannon,
if we don't, yeah, they'll figure it out. All right, sorry.
Now the cannon's triangulating our position, Kody, and we turn to little skeletons in the chair. We're in trouble.
Oh my god! All right, sorry. Go on.
No, all good. I need to type things correctly to make things happen. Okay, so now I'm on desktop 2. What I want to do now is, let's say that I've been in the environment for a while and I've kind of mapped stuff out, and I realize that the juicy data that I want, maybe I'm after financial data. I know it's on my file server and it's in the finance folder. I mean, it could be anywhere, and me as an attacker, I would probably maybe go after some low-hanging fruit. If there's data that was not secured to a least privilege, lockdown that's not locked down. There's tons of stuff out there I could do right now. A couple PowerShell lines to search for. But let's say that I'm very targeted, right? And I know the data that I want is in this Binance folder, but I'm an engineer. I have a Combination engineer account. That's what I've been working on. So I'm going to run this, and I'm going to try and get at the data in that folder. And I just want to show everybody what it looks like here. So I'm basically going to get an access denied. I don't have rights to that because this organization is following least privilege. I'm an engineer. Engineers have no business accessing the financial reports. Best case scenario for the defenders, right? They've gone through the trouble of locking this down. Bad case scenario for me as the attacker right now. But
so one thing I should mention, for one, our production person just enlarged your screen artificially so people can see it a little bit larger now. For two, we have a repeat question, which I'm sure is going to come up more. But how does this bypass Defender AMSI with Mimikatz, and then everyone forgets lasagna? Or lasang. It's a tool to do that.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I was going to say lasagna because I'm getting hungry now. Like maybe they're slipping the IT guy some lasagna. Like we got this lasagna here. Maybe you look the other way while we bypass your security.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could work. But I think the core question was, how would you bypass AMSI with Mimikatz?
That's a good question.
Right.
In this case, I know for a fact that our machines, they're set up in a way to allow us to do this without having to go through the extra steps of bypassing all of this stuff. That's maybe a topic for a much deeper discussion. Now, it's
also kind of why we're allowed to do this, because if you were to run this against a fully patched system, you would need to do a couple of extra steps in order to get there. So understand that there are a couple of steps that we're shortcutting a little bit that are not impossible. They're just time consuming, and we're doing that not just for the time of the demonstration, but also because if we showed you guys a complete step-by-step list of attacking a fully patched system that works right now this instant with 0 modifications, we may actually get in a little bit of trouble. So,
well, the other thing to keep in mind too is that we don't have to necessarily drop the mimikatz.exe on the machine to run this. You can run it in memory. There are plenty of ways to do that. I'm trying to think of it. If you search Mimikatz PowerShell, you can get it. You can just load it into memory without having to drop the exe. And there are things you can do to avoid some of the detections there. There are a couple great articles about there if you're really curious how to get Mimikatz to run without dropping the exe. But suffice to say, there is a PowerShell tool set built for that already. So it's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yes, good realistic question though.
Yeah, no, that's good. So in this case, I've got access denied. Womp womp. But that's not the end of the mission, right? I'm after this. I've invested the time. I wanna make my Bitcoin or whatever it is that I want, and I want this document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look back. I did get some of those Kerberos tokens from earlier on that I might be able to do some stuff with. So they're already authenticated. So I've already gone through the authentication. I've stolen them, extracted them out of memory. Can I do something with that? So I have that ticket. It's authenticated. Well, maybe I can just use that to pass the ticket over to the service and say, hey, I want to interact with the service. I have this great TGT. Please, let's go ahead and get that service granting ticket and authenticate me. So let's run through that. And so this is what we're doing right now. So sorry, but before we do that, it's going through that. You can see that it's going through Mimikatz again, and we'll give it a second. Sleeping for 10 seconds, and then we'll see the good stuff, and I'll point out what we did.
Cool.
Okay. A lot of sleeping on the job here. There we go.
Ooh, confidential.
Yep. So in this case, we were able to connect after we did the pass the ticket, and we were able to actually get access to that document here. And let me roll back. Come on. my mouse scroll is going very slow. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to see, but what we're going to do is we're going to pass it some of the tickets that we had extracted before that were already authenticated to be able to get a service ticket to access that service, more or less is how that works. So that's automated. We were able to extract those out of memory from a different account that was logged onto the machine and already gone through the authentication process. So we had a valid TGT and then send it over. Hey, this is basically just the second half of that handshake you typically go through. From the authentication of the domain controller returns the ticket. You can call and get the service you want to access, and then get the service granting ticket, and then send it over to your resource and get that access. So we're just basically doing the second part of that, the handshake. As a very quick way to explain it, we have a big diagram that shows all of the different back and forth steps to go through. But suffice it to say, we just did the back half because we had stolen a ticket already. We're not authenticating again. We had the TGT at this point. So anyway, I have got the document that I was after. Hooray. But now what do I do at this point? Of course, it's all kind of worthless unless I can get it back out to myself. So I was able to get access to the resource on my file server in my financial reports. And this is again really tricky too. Maybe I'd go and say like this is maybe my favorite. I don't have a lot of favorite kind of attack things, but this is really tricky. And I'll show what it is in a second.
Dang. Somebody just said that the only way to get hacked is by hacking Microsoft Upload virus on Windows Update as encrypted. Is that's the standard? Well, all right, I should retire because that seems like it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So the last thing that we're doing, I'm going to kick this off, is I'm going to do a DNS tunnel. So, like I said, this is just so clever and creative, and it takes time to do, but it's so much of a pain to detect. So as an attacker, I control this malicious domain, oddly titled maliciousdomain.com, and I'm running basically DNS there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send DNS requests, and at that front part, I could, for example, take the file, break it into little tiny chunks, put it at the front of my request, and when I do that lookup, it's going to go right out the door. Now it's going to take a really, really, really long time because I only have just a little bit, couple bytes of data here to send out at a time in these requests. But on the other end, I'm running that malicious domain.com. I'm caching these, and I can eventually reassemble it back into the file that I'm after. This is incredibly kind of hard to detect because there are potentially millions, billions of DNS events all day. DNS is very, very noisy. There's a lot going on here. And it's just a huge volume of data to look and analyze this. So this is a really tricky way that you can do this. And it's not just for exfiltrating data. You can establish these type of like callbacks and things like that for other stages in like the kill chain. You can use command and control over DNS too if you want.
This is a semi-related question that's come up multiple times. When that's just the difference between a bind shell and a reverse shell. Do you happen to remember?
Off the top of my head, no. I mean,
I didn't either, so I looked it up. The difference is that on a bind shell, there's a listener that's opened on the victim's computer, and the attacker connects to it.
You're calling in, and the reverse shell is just literally reversing it. Okay.
Exactly. And the reverse shell, you have a listener waiting for the attacker, and then the victim calls it. So, yeah.
I thought it might have been too on the nose to say a reverse shell is just having the victim call back to the attacker, but
yeah, that's basically.
There we go.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is the end. This is just going to take a while to upload because it's to do, especially if you're doing large files. You're not going to do a large file transfer to do it this way. But if you want to make sure you want to be as stealthy as possible and you want to get the data out, again, this is just going to run until it's done at this point. But now we've established that entire chain of from the initial exploit to moving laterally, the initial exploit gaining additional credentials, or at least tickets for credentials, moving laterally, or looking at different machines to move laterally, compromising that machine, using some of the credentials or tickets we got earlier to connect and get the data that we want, and of course getting the data out. So this is a kind of a full life cycle of an attack from start to finish here.
So somebody was asking, like, what is actually happening here? So if you're not familiar with these sorts of exfiltration attacks, essentially what we can do is abuse the way that kind of the internet works when we're looking up a domain. So we can take a file, break it into tiny pieces, and then we can encode it and send it out through these requests, which obviously is going to take a long amount of time. But because these are generally not monitored, and they're shockingly kind of just ignored when security is considered in most cases. This is a really common way that somebody will start to exfiltrate files, information, or command and control, controls, I guess. And also, one surefire way to know that your company has been breached is if you have a terabyte of DNS traffic. That is the number one irrefutable sign that something very, very, very bad has happened on your company's network.
And this is, like I said, this is just one way to do it. I mean, if you're an attacker, you can set up a malicious domain and HTTP site and just HTTP post it. If the company's letting web traffic go out, or HTTPS, and just post the data to the site, or if the company lets you use file sharing services, for example, you could potentially just upload it there too. It depends on the policy. I mean, this is just a really tricky way to do it, but there are tons of ways to get data out of the organization and to hide yourself doing it at that point.
Oh, definitely. One question was, if the machine is not permitted to go to the other server in case of a firewall, is there another way? Well, definitely. There's going to be some exit point of that network. So if you're able to breach other devices on the network and maybe get another way around that individual system, that's a great thing you could do too. There's lots of different things you can do when you're in the system to try to exfiltrate data. And taking advantage of all the things you have access to as you elevate your privileges makes it easier and easier to, give yourself permission or do things administratively that you may not supposed to have permission to do on the system, which is kind of the point of breaking in.
So that's what I got. And we could keep watching DNS all day. Do we have any other great questions?
We have a good amount of questions. So yeah, at this point, there's some people asking how you would prevent this sort of attack. How would you detect the exfiltration? How would you detect the pass the hash attack? What sort of things could a normal user have put into place that would have done this? And of course, there were the comments on, what if we had all the current defenses up and all the defaults set to the most secure, automatic updates, all that stuff. If this was a computer that was stood up pretty well, is there anything else we could do to detect that or stop it or otherwise make this more difficult?
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, there's a couple things to consider here too. Is, if you're going after a hardened organization, hardened target, you might have to pivot your. You can't use this out of the box Metasploit stuff. So this is, you can download it, and you can run it, you can play with it in your own lab and do it safely. But this is where we see some of these 0 days coming into play. The exchange. So this is from the outside getting in, but the proxy logon was a 0 day that they started exploiting, and who knows how long it was out there potentially before the Hafnium group started really using it, or some of the other ones that we've seen, or the zero logon. That might be my other favorite one, because it's literally just zero logons in the logon process. But they could have been out there for ages, and people could have been exploiting those. So if you're dealing with a much harder target, there are still ways, but you might have to dig deeper into the bag of tricks and leverage 0 days or other things, or hope you find a system that got lost and it wasn't patched to move around. It's not going to be as straightforward as this. But with that said, it's all about layers of defense, right? You're not going to, well, they're going to get in anyway, so we're going to turn off the firewalls, and they're going to get in anyway, so we might as well not put ACLs in the file systems. It's really about monitoring all these different places. So monitoring the perimeter telemetry, so what's coming in and out of the organization on VPN, for example, or DNS or proxy, because that's one piece of it. Monitoring what's happening with Active Directory and the authentication events, for example, to see who is authenticating from where, looking at the traffic, with the TGT and things like that. So you can spot things like the encryption downgrade if you're trying to do a Kerberos, or you can spot situations where you're only seeing the second half of the handshake to get access to a service on the environment. You want to monitor also what the user accounts are doing and what they're accessing as well too. So if you see, the engineer connecting to a different machine and start to access data, for example, that might be weird if you see that authentication take place or not take place maybe. But then you see data access coming through. It's multiple layers of defense as a defender in the organization. And there's not there's not a panacea, there's not a silver bullet. You have to just stack all of these things up, and it's an arms race basically.
Yeah, and one thing also I wanted to point out is there was a very recent breach that is a great example of how you would get around like Defender, like all these other things that affected lots of organizations, and that was the supply chain attack, where they wanted to get to the customers. They didn't even care really about that company so much, and they attacked a company that then had a product that did all the stuff that they wanted to do on the networks they were going to attack. So it looked like perfectly legitimate traffic was happening because these were friendly domains that had been basically whitelisted. So sometimes it's not about like getting around the firewall in terms of like disabling it or finding another way out. It's like, all right, what does the firewall allow? And if you know what the firewall allows, you can oftentimes work with that. So, depending on the skill and the motivation of the attacker and the amount of resources and time they have, these sorts of attacks can definitely be a lot more severe. We tend to see a lot of really low budget, low skill stuff shot out there after these 0 days go public that are just like ransomware and other stuff that, like, frankly, like a teenager could put together. It's not very sophisticated, and it's not the kind of stuff that's really gonna like be missed by sophisticated defenses. But once you jump up a little bit and you start having people that are making substantial amounts of their income based on this sorts of crime, that's when you start getting to layers of sophistication where, yes, if there's a 0 day that goes on sale that allows you to bypass Windows Defender, you could get in on the first wave of these attacks and be able to completely sweep aside some of the things that we've been talking about that are layered defenses that, if we don't know there's a 0 day out there, there's no way to defend against it, sometimes for weeks until the vendor comes up with a patch or officially acknowledges the problem. So lots of different ways in the real world that this could happen. And, we're not trying to like drop any 0 days on the live stream, but like a lot of the time, like if you are just like, in the hacker community enough to be able to get access to a proof of concept for one of these 0 days that's been made public, the vendor has pushed out a patch, but not everybody has applied it. Like that is really all it takes to begin doing like damage, and the layer of sophistication is then up to the actor, because it means they can just sweep aside some of these defenses like they're nothing.
And I mean, and that you bring up a great point though too that I want to stress is, I know we keep getting defender endpoint controls, all that. We are not saying at all don't have those. You need to absolutely have those, but there are systems in the environment that probably don't. Like the supply chain attack, you can compromise, a box or a device that's been handed to you and say, hey, here's whatever, or there could be servers out there for whatever reason will not or cannot have controls on them. Maybe they're super high performance and they can't take the additional overhead, but there are reasons. So you don't have to come in and try and batter down the secured door. You can look for a weaker, softer target out in the environment, and there are lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah, and then I also really like asymmetric or just kind of clever network defenses. I really like the people over at Thinkus Canary that make Canary tokens, because they're free resources you can hide on your system to make them look like important files. But then the second you open them, they call back to a DNS server or something else. And unless you are specifically looking out for them, like a lot of attackers have been caught either accessing something and then opening it, or otherwise like doing something that causes a Canary token to be triggered, because they're just like free little honeypots you can drop around your system to just make sure that something's not being accessed. And of course, like you could just have a file that's just looks really juicy that an attacker would like make a beeline to, and if they're not savvy that it could be a honeypot, they could blow their cover if they're just grabbing a 0 day that they bought and they're not a very sophisticated actor. So there's little booby traps you could put in your system, and there's other things you can do to kind of make things more complicated for an attacker and make it more likely that an unskilled attacker would reveal themselves. Some of which is, I think, very funny. I love honeypots. I think watching hackers get stuck in like Kippo honeypots is like my guilty pleasure of like watching them try to escape when the system fights them and like won't let them run certain commands. So not saying that's like an ideal thing, but as Kilian was saying, defense in depth and making it a complicated, like not standardized process for an attacker to go through all these processes is really the best you can do. If it's by the book programmatic, it can be hard coded to exploit your entire like domain, because everybody has access to everything, and like there's no permissions or monitoring. You're gonna have a bad time eventually.
Yep.
Cool. So there was a question about how do you feel about, I think it was Cobalt Strike as a C2 server resource, and there's a lot of stuff in the news about like, companies like Rapid7, for example, who make Metasploit, sometimes get criticized for like, hey, you're making stuff that attackers could use, even though this is also the primary tool security researchers use to like assess the vulnerability of a business that they're working for. But these tools, of course, can also be used for bad things. So like, providing a C2 server environment for malicious actors, maybe not the service for humanity that everybody would hope for. I personally, I'm not speaking on any official capacity. I think that these resources exist to be able to like test and do things, but at a certain point, like if it looks like a giant botnet is using it, it's like it's there comes a point when like it becomes a little problematic. But I wouldn't be the one to go in and say what they can and can't do.
Yeah, you turned into a robot there for a second at the beginning, but I guess it's the ethics or morality of publishing like these tools or exploits and things like that. And yeah. I mean, I guess it comes down to, well, there needs to be a responsible disclosure. So if you find something like that, or you find a bug or vulnerability, before you go and write that, you should talk to the vendor and let them know and give them a chance to patch it. But, it is part of valid research to test the systems to make sure that we're patched and not vulnerable. So, it's a balancing act, right?
Yeah, we actually had an excellent question that came along with that, which was, I found some serious security issues in critical infrastructure. I've reported it multiple times and suggested fixes, but I'm not taken seriously. What am I supposed to do? This happens all of the time. Like you'll find a problem in maybe something that you use, something you're a customer of, something your school, your government uses, and you're just like, hey, this is a problem. I'm a consumer, like this needs to be fixed. And oftentimes something bad will happen, and the person you're reporting it to will either refuse to acknowledge that it's a real problem, they won't engage you with it, or lots of companies have this issue. And the real issue here is like, how do you avoid risk to yourself while going through this disclosure process? Lots of businesses don't understand that you're not threatening them, that you're not extorting them, and they may not have any real interest in fixing this. So being more aggressive is only going to make them more aggressive in response. So working with companies like Hackeroni, or BugCrowd could be a good way to have somebody guide you through the responsible disclosure process. Because also just dumping your weaponized proof of concept on GitHub is also probably not a good way to make yourself known as a security researcher, because there is a standard for responsible disclosure that says, hey, like you need to go through this process to let the vendor at least have a reasonable chance of making the world a better place by fixing their stuff. And if they refuse to, then this is the correct way to drop that information so that effectively pressure mounts from their consumers to do something about it, because it's not a secret anymore. So that's really the process. And if you need help, then there's lots of people at, I think, BugCrowd or Hackeroni that can go ahead and help you with that. Because yes, it is something that is delicate, and a lot of people mess it up. So if you need help, don't hesitate to reach out to those organizations, because that's what they do: bug bounty programs and just responsible disclosure.
Yep.
Let's see. I think what was your most challenging conflict when going into a target computer? Sorry, I am under some NDAs on that one. I probably would have to abstract too much about that to go into that story. Yeah, I think that's pretty much. Well, we've got some extra minutes. I can read some more questions. So if you guys have any more questions you want to drop in the chat, we've got probably like 5-6 more minutes before we're gonna take off. But all in all, these questions.
Before the laser gets us.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Before finally somebody executes the low orbit ion cannon and we can't continue anymore. Yeah, I think that I have noticed the questions today are really excellent, and I appreciate everyone who's in the chat, both from the Security Forward channel and also, of course, from Nullbyte. If you haven't already checked out the Security Forward channel, we do these sorts of live streams every week, multiple times a week. So you can go to hackingwithfriends.com in order to check that out, or Security Forward, SecurityFWD on YouTube. And you can see us go live every week, although Kilian has his own show, actually, on Threat Update. But you can see us go live every week and talk about, both new security tools you can check out, as well as we've had Nick come on and do a hacker operating system. No, actually, no, sorry, that was James did a hacker operating system series, and our friend Nick has come on to do an Android app hacking series. So lots of really great, cool content on that. And we hope to see you there because we always enjoy some more great commenters and other people. And of course, also, if you want to follow us individually, you can check me out on Twitter at Kody Kinsey. And that's just my full name. Or you can just go to hack.gay and find all our great content there. Oh, and I also wanted to give a shout out. This is totally unrelated. We just dropped one of our first videos on Hack 5 after quite some time. So if you guys want to check out a great crossover we did with Hack 5, check out the latest episode on an IoT nightmare I created by hacking our good friend Michael's home automation system. It was a lot of fun.
Oh.
Let's see. Which firewall is easiest for an attacker to hack? Palo Alto, Cisco. We can't call out brands like that. We're gonna get in trouble. Ooh. Okay. Oh, and also some people subscribe to SecurityFWD. Cool. We'll see you guys there.
Nice.
Of course, I think we're going to continue to more regularly do these live streams because you guys are a lot of fun. I love these topics, and we also love having Kilian on the show. But I think we also might sneak Kilian onto an upcoming episode of Hack 5. So if you're also a subscriber on Hack 5, you might see Kilian on as one of our experts as well. By the way, Kilian, we might have you on Hack 5. Forgot to tell you.
You got me. How can I turn down such an invitation?
Right in front of all these witnesses, it's like I proposed to you in front of a bunch of random people.
Hacker proposal? I don't know.
Will you come on Hack 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that'll be fun. We've got some great ideas for upcoming episodes, and some of the ones even based on the demonstration we did last time. So if you want to check that out, then yeah, we'll see you guys there. So I think that is most of the time we have for today.
Awesome.
Somebody's asking me if I'm a robot. No, I'm not, and you can't prove it because I won't submit to an examination. But aside from that, I think we've got most of the serious questions settled. Thank you, guys. So, Kilian, thank you for lending your expertise and showing off this kind of spooky attack on navigating around, enumerating, and going a bit further on just getting control over a Windows system.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love coming on. I love these questions. I have a lot of fun. So this was great. And thank you all again for watching and being so welcoming me to the channel and the community.
Yep, so make sure to follow us on the SecurityFWD channel, subscribe, like this video, and share with anyone you think would benefit from it. We love ideas for upcoming episodes, so if you have them, make sure to let me know on Twitter, or you can drop them in the chat, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks, bye.
Thanks, take care.